Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So first I'd just like to express appreciation for this wonderful occasion of so many people coming together to listen to the Dhamma and around the life of Luang Por Chah. And yes, and all the good work that's been gone into arranging this occasion by the organisers. So they say, and they say, the gift of Dharma excels all other gifts. It's nice to receive a gift, and it can give us maybe a temporary feeling of well-being, but it's limited. But the gift of Dhamma is something that can bring long-term well-being. So this is why the gift of Dhamma is the best of gifts. So it's wonderful we can come here today and receive the gift of Dhamma. 40 years ago in England, now you saw that video, that was from 1979, and there wasn't really much talk of Buddhism in those days. You weren't taught it at school, and there wasn't really much in the media about Buddhism. One of the only things that you heard snippets of maybe teachings similar to Buddhism was a series on television called Kung Fu, where you saw these Buddhist monks engaged in different activities. Yeah. For myself, I never really heard much about Buddha's teachings, and when I became interested in the teachings, in religious teachings, as you saw with the Christian vicars and pastors on that video, it was all about belief. You got to take Christ as your person you believe in. It's a lot about belief. Now, as somebody who was brought up as an atheist and also engineer, scientist, I didn't feel it was healthy just to blindly believe things. But then a friend of mine at work informed me that Buddhism is religion where you don't have to believe in God. And that sparked off an interest in the Buddha's teachings. But then it was quite difficult to actually, find a book on Buddhism. But eventually, I found a book on Buddhism and really appreciated what I read in that book, and I think from that day I was a Buddhist. And then I went, I was working in North London, so I ventured down into the big city to the Buddhist society, and I used to attend some meditation classes there. But while I was at the Buddhist society one day, somebody said there's these monks living in Hampstead. And actually that was nearer to where I lived in North London than going into the big city, so I thought I'd go along and check this place out. And so I had the good fortune, I think it was in early 1978, to go to the Hampstead Vihara and meet, as you saw in that video, a young Lumpur Samedo and Ajahn Viradamo. Yes, and I started to attend the meditation classes there on the, like Sunday night. We had puja, meditation, and Dhamma talk. My first, the teachings I heard at the Buddhist Society were more Zen orientated, and I couldn't really relate to some of the things that were being taught. But when I went to the Hampstead Vihara, I could understand what Lumpur Sumedho was talking about. So I started to go there every Sunday night. I find it so helpful to, to chant, meditate, listen to a Dhamma talk on a Sunday evening, because it seemed to put me in a good frame of mind for the week ahead at work. And so I used to go there regularly on a Sunday evening. And then I came to know that the teacher of Lumpur Sumedho and Ajahn Viradamo was coming to visit London. And I'd seen the mindful way, and from that, just had quite a favourable impression of the teacher of Lumpur Cha. So of course, when he arrived in the Hampstead Vihara, I went along to attend the evening meditation. And it was quite a wonderful experience, very inspiring in terms of, I mean, I'm quite tall. I'm, nearly 2 meters, and Ajahn Chah's, 5'2". But talk about presence. And he seemed to have a presence that filled, I mean, it wasn't a very big shrine room, but a definite sense of presence as he sat on the raised seat. But more interesting, and something that one of the speakers touched on, was how one is affected by people's practice. I'd been practicing meditation maybe for about a year or so, but the experience of it was, sitting there, monkey mind, restless, not so comfortable sitting. And when Ajahn Chah was there, things calmed down. And which was quite unexpected. And then just to hear the voice of Ajahn Chah, you felt there was a sort of wisdom and authority in it. Even though it was, he was speaking, of course, in Thai, and it was translated, there was a sort of something, you just had this feeling it was something coming from a very wise place, very good, wise place. So, I say, I used to go there on one night a week, but it was such that first night was such a special experience. I decided to go there every night while he was there. And yeah, just his presence, one really felt this very wonderful presence. And I remember one evening, he didn't actually come up into the shrine room because he was receiving people downstairs. And still, the sense of more, peace in the meditation was still there. So he'd give talks after the meditation every night, and then we'd go downstairs and have time, had a cup of tea together, and talk with Ajahn Chah. And he would ask us questions. So one of the questions he asked me was, what do you think it would be like to sit there for a whole hour without a single thought coming into your mind? And my response to him was, very enlightened. And then he said to me, like a stone. And I did respond to that. It was like the Zen master gives you a koan and it just takes you to, there's no answer. But just to reflect because on that teaching, that what, in later times of meditation, what really came from that teaching was, the tendency we have in meditation to somehow think we have to get rid of all these thoughts. How many people say, oh, I can't meditate, my mind just thinks about this and thinks about that. And how we can have this idea that somehow we've got to get rid of all these thoughts to get to this more calm and peaceful state. So I go on these retreats, and went on one retreat that, you note everything, movements you do. It was one of the techniques that came from Burma. And, I really went for it. Try to move very slowly, note everything. But also it meant actually holding down a lot of the tendency to think. And what I found was that when actually at the end of the day of practice, when I came to lie down, that all this thoughts that I sort of pushed down through the day all came welling up, like my head seemed to explode with all these thoughts. And also how if we try to, use a lot of willpower to suppress thought, how it just makes one more restless. So I was very restless because I was trying to use too much energy to get rid of the thoughts. So the very effort to get rid of created more. And it's as though Lumpur Cha noticed that tendency. Maybe he saw the expression on my face while I was meditating. That the tendency to think, to get rid of thoughts, and use a lot of willpower to do that. So, reflecting on that teaching, now learning more to observe the mind that's thinking, rather than trying to repress the thoughts, observe more how the thoughts come and go. And this, when this skill is more learned, then the mind comes to more natural sense of balance and peace. And thinking processes, if we don't feed them, settle down. So also in that documentary, they talk about the still forest pool. And so the analogy that comes to mind in terms of meditation is like, the mind fundamentally is still and clear, but things come into the mind. And to me it's like this, like I was just given recently some effervescent vitamin tablets. You drop them in the water and they fizzle and bubbles come. And, that's how I experience the mind. Something comes into the mind, some mood, and because of the mood, thoughts come from it, like the bubbles come from the tablet. And, the skill is just how to observe that, the mood and the thoughts that come, and allow it to fizzle out. Like eventually the tablet dissolves, the bubbles stop, and the mind comes back to its natural state of calm and clarity. So, a teaching that I heard at a question session with Lumpur Cha, and because he asked the question, it really helped to remember that, to remember what he'd said. It's something that stayed with me and one would reflect on. The second teaching was actually during a meditation session. Now, the Hampstead Vihara was on a busy road in Hampstead, across the road from a pub. And one evening, while Lumpur Cha was there was a pop group playing in the pub across the road. Now, I don't think they were actually playing a concert because they seemed to be practicing the same song over and over again. And if I may say so, they weren't very good. So we sat through this practicing pop group. And feeling, quite irritated and annoyed by this not very pleasant sound. And then the meditation finished, and first thing Lumpur Cha said to us was, you thought the music was annoying you, but he said, in truth, you were annoying the music. So that's the wisdom of the wise master. He doesn't point at the problem out there, but looking more to the heart and mind. And that's another teaching that stayed with me, because I do tendency to like quiet places without a lot of noise. So later in years, when I became a monk, I was spending time in a monastery in Thailand, and I spent, a few years there. And the first year was very nice, having a nice, quiet kuti, nice, spacious, quiet kuti, in a forest, on a hill, nice, cool breezes blowing through. But then, the second year, I think because there were more monks wanting to come and stay in the monastery, they started to build new kutis. And all around the kuti where I was staying. So the quiet forest was now the sound of power tools, people talking, hammers banging all around. And I mean, one thing was, at least I couldn't understand what they were talking about because I didn't understand a lot of Thai language. But still, the noise. And the initial response is, missing the quiet from the year before. And I thought, I'll go to the abbot and see if he can move me to a quieter kuti. This is the first thought. Then, remembering this teaching of Luang Por Chah, is the sound of the tools annoying you, or you annoying the sound? So I decided not to move, and to sit there and see if I could not annoy the sound. And, over time, the annoyance faded out and the mind became peaceful with the noise, didn't react to the noise anymore. Now this is what the Buddha and Luang Por Chah talk about in terms of how wisdom arises through contemplating the senses. And there is a talk, one of Luang Por Chah's talk is about sense contact, the fountain of wisdom. And if not hearing sounds or seeing sights was the way to enlightenment, then, as both the Buddha and Luang Por Chah once commented, blind people and deaf people would be enlightened. But, of course, this is not so. So, wisdom can arise from, skillfully relating to sense contact, understanding the likes, dislikes that come up in the mind from sense contact, but be willing to contemplate that. So, to me, Buddha's teachings is not about being like totally introverted, but then not totally extroverted, but balancing awareness of outer things and inner things. contemplating the things that we come in contact with the outside, but also be able to contemplate the responses to those external stimuli in such a way that the mind can just learn more to peacefully observe this interaction between the inner and the outer. So when the Buddha was asked how he practiced, he said he didn't practice not seeing things or hearing things, but as he practiced when he saw things and like and dislike would arise, he wouldn't hold on to them. So the mind would come back to the quality of more equanimity. So, more the way to find a more quality of peace and understanding of the sensory world and how the mind responds to these. So this is also what what Luang Por Chah would encourage. He didn't encourage us always to hide away from the world, but to be able to contemplate our interaction with the world. So that was another teaching that stayed with me and became, came to light as came to mind as time went on, and became a very helpful thing to contemplate. We were sat down having tea with Luang Por Chah, and I say I was quite in awe. I think when Luang Por Chah was, that time in England, he was just manifesting this very joyful quality of metta for the people around. I didn't witness the sort of more, say, grumpy side that some people have talked about who live with him in Thailand. He was more manifesting this very joyful, wise and friendly way of being. So I was downstairs and, just bathing in this joyfulness and metta of Luang Por Chah. And I turned to the monk next to me and said, it must be so wonderful living with Luang Por Chah. And I was quite surprised at his response. He said, "We're going pretty difficult sometimes." And what I heard, I wasn't a witness to this, that during Luang Por Chah's visit to England, they were invited to a dana. And, just to speculate a bit, usually the food was cooked by an anagarika at the Hampstead Vihara, and probably his cooking might not have been cordon bleu. But they were invited to the house of a lady who's a very good cook. And so they were sat down and she offered the food to Luang Por Chah. He took something from the first dish, passed it down the line, and then, for the rest of the dishes, he just put some food in his bowl and didn't pass the other dishes down the line. So, they didn't get a lot to eat that day, and probably expecting a very nice meal. So this is the challenges of living with Luang Por Chah, would challenge our desires and attachments. I think the word in Thai also is like they say, Toraman. He taught people, sometimes tortured them a little bit. But I didn't, I know some people talked about being a bit afraid of Luang Por Chah, but maybe because he did, when I was with him, he tended to manifest more this very joyful being. And then Luang Por Chah, he left England and went to America and spent some time in America, then came back again. And he was present at an ordination in a place in Oxford called Oakenholt. And there was quite a few people took some temporary, some long-term ordination with the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw of Burma. So we had both the Mahasi Sayadaw of Burma and Luang Por Chah there at this Upasampada ordination. And, well, I decided, I mean, sometimes with authority, authority figures, one can feel a bit shy of going up. But maybe a bit, concerned about how they might respond to you. But I didn't feel that with no sort of fear around Luang Por Chah. So I went up to him and I made sort of Anjali to him and asked him, how was America? And I got such a lovely warm response. He got hold of my hands and he said, people are suffering there just like everywhere else. And he gave a huge smile. And so, what came to mind after meeting, Luang Por Chah was that this is the most sort of happiest person I'd ever met, and just presence and being and joyfulness, and if that was the fruits of the meditative life, then it was well worth pursuing. So it was very inspiring in terms of seeing the potential of what the practice of Dhamma can manifest. And that is, what the Buddha said, one of the sources of faith is to meet somebody who manifests sort of the beauty of Dhamma practice. Besides, of course, like, hearing teachings, but to actually meet somebody who manifests the beauty of Dhamma practice. But also, just reading some of the teachings of Luang Por Chah. In the late 70s, there were many different teachers and techniques coming onto the Dharma scene in terms of, especially from Burma, many different teachers of different sort of meditation techniques. And there was this slight biasness about samatha and vipassana. There was talk about samatha and vipassana. And just to give an example, this is later, but somebody once asked me, how can I bring more sort of well-being or happiness into my meditation practice? And my response was, have you tried some mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati? And his response was, ooh, he says, that's samatha. I was quite surprised. You can't, that's samatha, I'm going to practice pure vipassana. So how people can, hold on to these views about meditation practice, depending on, techniques and biases here and there. But then, reading Luang Por Chah's teachings about samatha and vipassana like being like two ends of a log. And if you pick one end of the log up, naturally the other end will follow. And that was, my experience of meditation practice, trying, contemplating more anapanasati and mindfulness of breathing, but as you practice that, you learn about the mind. You learn about the hindrances, you become more aware of the different thoughts and moods, naturally. So naturally, I found insight naturally came through the practice of mindfulness of breathing. So I appreciated, Luang Por Chah's more open and less fixed way of teaching. And like people have mentioned today, how his teachings would vary depending on the person. And, one reads the way he taught, like mindfulness of breathing, was slightly different sometimes, about where to watch the breath, how to watch the breath. So that sort of openness of heart and receptiveness, and again, to come to the West and to adapt to the Western society. Now in Thailand, as a monk, you're treated with such respect and reverence. Now I don't know if you ever heard, but Luang Por Chah was walking through Hampstead. And again, this is the Kung Fu series. And apparently, I wasn't there, but I was told about it, these young lads were dancing around Ajahn Chah, thinking he was a Kung Fu master. And, and doing all these sort of kicking movements and punching movements around him. And apparently, Ajahn Chah's response to that, talking to the monk with him, was, oh, you've got some good teachers around here. So the ability just to adapt, not getting, all righteous about, you shouldn't treat me like this, I'm a monk. But just being with the way it was, adapting to the conditions. And, not being treated with the same reverence that he was treated with in Thailand. But another thing that I heard Luang Por Chah did like was actually Westerners could be quite challenging in the way they questioned him. Where in Thailand people would just tend not to challenge him in any way. But I heard he really liked the way the Westerners would challenge and ask questions. And again, that's how we learn. And that's how he taught too, by asking questions. So I heard he really appreciated his time in the West because people were interested in the actual teachings or asking questions. So he said it was like watering a young sapling that had great potential for growth. And because of that, we were blessed by, Luang Por Chah deciding to leave behind Luang Por Sumedho and the other monks at Hampstead Vihara with the idea to start monasteries, not only beginning in England, but actually spreading around the world. So, I feel I've been very privileged that when an interest in the Buddha's teachings and when I was looking for and learning about Buddhism, that there were teachers like Luang Por Chah, Luang Por Sumedho, had just actually arrived in England. So, I feel very privileged to have found such good teachers who have, inspired and guided through all these years. And offered this beautiful gift of Dhamma, this beautiful gift that excels all other gifts. So I'd like to offer these thoughts.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.